Hey, everyone. So, why is it, if you think about moms, why is it that they're so amazing at taking care of everyone but themselves? Do you take care of you? Today, we're going to talk about how, and Mala's going to be here to share this with us, how we can reclaim our dreams, speak our truth, and actually live in our joy. So important to do that. So I hope you can join us. My name is Cheryl Bassett. I'm founder of Unstoppable Connections, international bestseller, and creator of the award-winning Unstoppable Family Meeting Toolkit. I am also the host of this show, Kitchen Table Conversations, as part of the Edge Network. Now, I do get to share my 4 gifts, and families tap into that to create an unshakable, unbreakable foundation that's built on trust. If you would like to learn more about the 4 gifts and how you can implement them into your family, you can reach out at unstoppableconnections.com. Now, if you have an idea for this show or you would like to be on this show, you can actually send me a message through kitchentableconversations.com. Now, I always like to set an intention for the show. It's just really important, I think, to do that so that we ground it in the right energy. This show is designed to cover the fun stuff to the tough stuff and everything in between. Today, I feel like we're sort of in that middle range where we're going to have a little bit of fun with it, but obviously it's a really important topic. So again, I hope you're going to stick around and join us as Mala shares. But all of the shows that we do are designed to ignite conversations, to strengthen our families, and to create a positive ripple out into the world. And we also do get to tap into the 4th gift that I get to share, which is the gift of love. And we choose to unwrap that gift by allowing ourselves to celebrate others and to celebrate ourselves. So that's really what today's show is about. So as we do that celebration of others, I really want to set that intention for the show with an open heart and an open mind to celebrate Mala, who came here today, her talents, her gifts, and her beautiful ideas that she's going to share with us. So let me just read a little bit about her, and then we'll get started here. She's already on the screen. Normally I flip down and it didn't go, so we're just going to start with her here, waiting to be interviewed. On screen. So you already got to see her. But Mala helps women shift from self-doubt to self-love so they can feel confident. She is a life coach, EFT practitioner, writer, podcaster, and a mama, of course. She is on a mission to help women get rid of imposter syndrome so they can feel successful in all areas of their life, ensuring that they give themselves permission to always be their authentic self, speak their truth, and experience joy. So, Mala, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, so she comes to us all the way from Australia. So it is 9:30 in the morning where I am and 9:30 at night where she is. So she had the tough end of the deal here. She said, you're a morning person, you said. So everybody has a story as to why they do what they do and why they are passionate about it. Tell me a little bit about you and why it is you're passionate in this area.
It really starts from when I was really little because I was adopted. So I grew up and I was a brown girl. I was raised by my Caucasian family, and I always felt really caught between the two worlds, not really belonging. So from there, as I grew up, I kind of really struggled with my identity and really accepting who I was, and trying to grasp at things to come to that sort of set of peace and feeling okay with who I was. And eventually I got into partying and things like that as a younger kind of age. And I went over to Sri Lanka as well. I met my birth family and realized I didn't fit in there either. It was so different. The culture is so different to Australia. And I carried myself like a Westerner, and I was really not connected to that part of my heritage. So I would numb things. I would numb with watching too much TV or drinking and partying too much. All these different things that really were detrimental to my well-being. And eventually I developed vitiligo on my skin, which is a skin condition where you lose the pigmentation on your skin. And so I started literally kind of turning white, and I realized that's not what I wanted. So I was thrown head first into this journey of self-acceptance. And discovering my identity and connecting to my identity. And then I got postnatal depression with my son. I had my son and I was pregnant, and I had only had a tiny patch of vitiligo at the time. But once I fell pregnant with him, it was a trigger, I think. So it started to really spread and progress a lot on my hands and my feet. And I realized that I had to face off with myself and start taking care of myself if I wanted to be around for my son. And more than anything, I want to be an amazing role model for him and teach him what is possible for him. So it was a real catalyst for change for me. And I just know what it's like to not know who you are and to feel like an imposter, to feel like an outsider and that you don't belong, because I felt like that for so long. And, you know, to me, belonging isn't about fitting in. It's about accepting yourself, giving yourself permission to be you and fully expressing that, not trying to be someone that you're not and living through shoulds. So I'm so passionate about it because of my experiences. And that's it really.
We hadn't even talked about that, but it's so true. I think we all land in our space, right? Because we get so deeply passionate about a journey we've taken, right? That allows us to then obviously share with others. And you bring up such an important point in all of this, because, you know, you talked about your son, and he's 5 now, right? Yeah. So, but, you know, and I've shared this before too, but I know this is part of your point is that the more that we can live in our joy as a parent, the more that our children can live in theirs. And so finding that is so important for not just for you, but for them as well. And, you know, stepping into that space. So that's great. I wanted to kind of bring up something else that you just mentioned, because I think it's like really important. And I think and it's kind of what you're saying. We talk about self-esteem versus inherent worth. And I think there is a big difference, right? That inherent worth comes from within. And I think that's what you finally tapped into.
Rewriting your worthiness story is a huge part of what I do. It's it sort of underpins everything, because you know, I think self-esteem can come from outside of you and be really based on other people, whereas worthiness is from you, it's from within. And it's not always easy. It can be really challenging, and I really believe there are steps and layers to like self-love, for example. I don't think you can just jump from totally hating yourself to self-love. I think that's too much of a stretch, and I don't think it's realistic. I think you have to consistently like build up and put an effort and put in work for yourself, and constantly revisit it. Even when you're feeling really on top of your worth, it's still important to pay attention to self-care and all that stuff, because there can always be triggers and stuff, and it's so important. It's, you know, you eat healthy, you don't just stop eating healthy and think that everything's going to stay great. You need to really like maintain it and have a sustainable kind of practice in your life.
Yeah, there's a book called The Slight Edge. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's another book called The Compound Effect, right? It's concept, right? It's the small decisions. Like if you eat a donut every day, that's a slight edge towards the wrong direction. But if you have a donut once in a while, it's not a big deal. So what is that those daily decisions, right, that you're making that either move you in a path of really, you know, harnessing power in your life or taking you down the wrong road. So, yeah. So let's talk about, because I think this is kind of interesting to think about, what is self-care? Because it's like I talk about wellness, right? And a wellness company in one company could mean that they have a vending machine that has healthy stuff in it, to you know, they don't to another one that just has, you know, and maybe they do a lot of things around wellness, to somebody that just has a weight loss program put into their company, right? There's a huge difference in how you define wellness, but I would assume there's a huge difference in how you're defining self-care too. So what's your definition, and how do you work with people about what is self-care?
Yeah, you know, self-care is such a buzzword, and I really think that lots of people think of self-care as bubble bath or getting your nails done and this superficial stuff. And don't get me wrong, I love a good bath, and it can be such a nourishing, nurturing thing to do. It really can. But to me, self-care is such deep work. It's some of the deepest stuff you can do. And I really think whilst it can be that, and it can also be like deeper things. So there can be things like setting really clear boundaries with people, saying no, making powerful requests. That is, to me, a form of self-care, because when you set boundaries with people, you're taking care of yourself. It's also scheduling and setting yourself up to have support or to have, time alone. If you're a mum, like, scheduling can be really valuable. I mean, I have to schedule all my appointments because otherwise I would never be able to make requests for time by myself. But it is also, meditation, it's journaling, it's it could be pulling a card, or whatever makes you feel nurtured and taken care of. But I think it's a commitment to yourself. Ultimately, it's a commitment to yourself that often can take a half an hour. Sometimes it can take 5 minutes. So, I have days where I've got a 10-month-old baby girl as well. And some days my self-care is boiling the kettle, standing there while the kettle boils and letting the steam like hit my face, and just having a mindful moment and being present to like warmth of the steam on my face. And now I've been doing this for a really long time and going all in on this for so long that it's okay. Like, I can afford to do that because I have so many tools, and some days that's all I need, because I've filled my cup in so many ways. Sometimes I do think, especially if you're really new to taking care of yourself, then you probably would want to do more than that. And I think a consistent, committed practice of 30 minutes or something is really valuable. But sometimes, I honestly believe doing sometimes some of those difficult things like boundaries can be the most amazing, effective form of self-care that just can change everything. And it's really powerful, and it's not easy.
It's really about standing in the awareness of it, though. And, and I totally agree with what you're saying on the, like, I know when I first started to do meditation, obviously I feel like I would do like a 30-minute meditation, and I would maybe get to the state I really wanted to be in the last 2 minutes of it. Right. But as you do it more, it's easier to get into that place, as you just like, you can step into the space you want to be in. So like you're talking about, just those 2 moments that you take, you can actually achieve a lot in 2 minutes once you understand how to kind of just tap within. But that takes time to learn how to do some of those things.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned The Slight Edge, because I really love that book, and I really live by a lot of that. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is creating tiny commitments, I call them, and little habits. So if you want to build up, if you want to start a meditation practice, don't start with 30 minutes. I just don't agree with that. I think you get to start really small. And this is what I did when I was in the depths of my postpartum depression. I'd meditated before, but I was out of practice. I hadn't done it for a while, so I stopped, and I made the time for myself, and I would started with like 1 minute. And the next day I went back to my meditation spot and I did 1 minute and 20 seconds. The next day I did 1 minute and 40 seconds. And I did that, and I did it so slowly, and I added up. Every day I added something onto it, and it was so small that it tricked my brain into thinking it was the same, and I didn't really notice a difference. But eventually I was meditating for 30 plus minutes, didn't notice a difference, and I was going deep, and I wouldn't have done that if I just jumped in. I would have just quit. and then not taking care of myself. But by doing it in a really tiny, small way, it just shifted everything. So I'm a really big believer in that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The slight edge for me was, I mean, I've done it with a number of things, and meditation is one of them. I was kind of thrown into meditation because I started to share with you before the show that I had gotten really sick at one point, and I actually couldn't breathe, and I would end up being allergic to our birds. But during that time, like, I really couldn't move. So meditation actually felt like, even though it's really a form of being and not doing, it felt very much like a doing thing for me, because there wasn't a lot I could do. And it was really a gift, right? But it really kind of threw me. So I didn't get to baby step into it, but I totally agree. And one of the things that I did it with was, I'd get a book that I say I was going to read, and then I would never read it. It would sit there, you know what I mean? It was, and so what I started doing was just reading 10 pages a day. You read a 300-page book, 10 pages a day, and sometimes I'd read more, but I could finish a book then in a month. And if it was a shorter book, I could do 2 books a month. And I went from reading 0 books by just bite-sizing it off. And the slight edge was actually part of, like, that concept was a really big part of that. And now it's like, I read, because I enjoy reading, but it was just carving out that time and sitting down and making it happen. And I thought, well, I got time for 10 pages, And so
definitely.
Yeah. So that's a really important, in fact, the Compound Effect is a book that's similar, and I've read it too, but they're both really phenomenal for that concept.
I haven't read that one yet. I might have to I'll get it on Audible or something. But I did that with running as well, which was something that I always thought I was not a runner. And I mean, I'd done it at school, I'd done cross country, and then I just didn't believe I could do it, and did the same thing and realized I could. It was amazing.
And you enjoy it?
Yeah, I love running. Since my daughter, I haven't run. So it's been a while. So when I can get back to it, I will do the same thing.
So that's when you get to get back to at some point, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So let's just, you've kind of touched into some of this too, about how it's really changed your life. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add in that space, but obviously you've definitely hit on that. But are there other ways that you feel like some of the self-care stuff has just totally impacted your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think I really covered it, but for me, it was about that commitment to myself, because I was in the depths of depression, and I made a conscious choice that something had to change. And for me, the first thing I did was decide I was going to wake up earlier so I could be up before my son, who fortunately was an amazing sleeper. So he would sleep in till, well, at the time, maybe 6, and eventually it stretched till 7. So I could get up at 5 and have a good solid hour. So I was very lucky. With him, my daughter is a little bit different. So I don't necessarily do that now, but that commitment was something I never broke. At that time, every single morning, I was up at that time. At one point, I was getting up at 3:45 because I just eventually I just loved that time to myself. I wanted that much time as that. So it was almost the middle of the night, 3:45, it was dark, everyone was asleep, and I'd get up and sit in the dark and meditate and journal. And I grew, I guess you could say it was a bit almost like an addiction, because I just needed it and I craved it, and it became so healing for me. But it started with that commitment to myself, and by doing it every day, I built my self-trust, and strengthened that self-trust, which strengthened my intuition, and really. So
you've brought up the journaling a couple of times. That's another powerful thing, obviously, that people can be doing, is the journaling. So let's just talk about a family and the mom, right? She takes on, a lot of times it's the mom. It's not always the mom, but it's a lot of time it's the mom who's taking on, like, balancing everything, and obviously then trying to take care of the kids and keep everything running. So how does she carve out that time for herself? And that's what we're talking about right now, is how do we carve out that time? You were talking about the meditation, you're talking about the journaling. Both of those are things that, but here's my question in all this, because I had someone on one time talking about the fact that when you make a decision, if every day you get up and you have to make that same decision, you haven't actually made the decision. And you made me think of that, because what it sounded like was you made the decision, and really not getting up at 5 a.m. and doing what you wanted to do really wasn't an option for you at that point.
Yeah, and I made the decision, definitely. And like, I was in a place at that time, I had no support around me. I barely knew everyone. We'd just moved into state, so I didn't, and my partner was working really long hours. So I didn't have support. I couldn't, there was nobody that I knew that I could ask at the time. It was not in our finances to pay someone to look after the kids. My partner worked long hours, so my option was get up early or really suffer more. So yeah, I had to decide. And I guess I could have stayed up later, but like we mentioned before, I'm not a night owl.
You're a morning person, so yeah, that fits a little bit better.
Mornings.
Yeah, and I think being aware of that is important too. Like, when is that time? When I try to read at night, you can forget it. I can read the same sentence when I read the same sentence 5 times and I still have no idea what it says, I know it's just time to go to bed, and that's what happens usually, right? In the morning, I'm a morning person, but everybody's different in terms of, what that looks like for them. So I think being in tune with that's probably important as well. You have one of the things you put in your questions here was, what is, for me to ask you, what was your biggest act of self-love?
So for me, it was getting sober, and it was a really easy decision, and it was one of those things that I'd actually given it up before for a year, and then it kind of slid back in. But and I've had times in my life where it was really detrimental, and I was definitely drinking way too much. At the time that I gave it up, I didn't drink a lot, and actually my body was starting to kind of reject alcohol. Like, I'd have 2 glasses of wine and be very ill the next day. So, but I was usually having like sparkling water or something with a glass of wine, so it was really diluted. But I just didn't enjoy it, and it was a real energy bleed and a drain for me, and it was still a numbing mechanism. So I'm very conscious of those things, and I knew it was numbing me from allowing me to feel everything that I wanted to feel. And I think it's so important to feel everything. So I let it go, and it was a decision I made. And as soon as I made the decision, it was done. It wasn't in my life, and it was easy for me because I put it in my past. Jim Forden talks about this a lot with habits on his podcast, and that really helped me. But it was funny because I heard it after I'd done it, and I was like, wow, that's what I did. I decided, I made it a part of my past, and I moved forward. So it was easy, and I haven't looked back. And it was 3 years, the 3-year anniversary last Friday. So really exciting. And I'm really passionate about it. And I did the same thing with coffee. I noticed that I was drinking too much coffee, and I was using that as a vice, and I was drinking about 4 cups a day. And we were actually traveling in Japan with our toddler at the time. And you can't get a good cup of coffee before 10 a.m. in most places there. And that was a problem for me because I was a 6 a.m. kind of cup girl. And so I was going to vending machines and having cans, or I was making my partner wait to go and see the touristy things so that we could find coffee places before we went anywhere. And I realized that was a problem because it was having a massive impact. So I actually quit coffee in 2018, and I have had decaf, and I have had coffee here and there since. But the last time I had coffee was I had like half a cup, and I was very I noticed how wired I was, and I just cannot honestly believe how much I used to drink and how much it actually affects you and affects your mind. And so for me, that was something that I let go when I noticed that it was having an effect on me. And now there's no way I'd go back to drinking it because I've seen what it does.
That's great. And I think I feel like what I hear you saying a lot is that what you did is that you're looking at some of the things that aren't serving you and you're replacing them with things that do. And I think that, we all have our addictive tendencies. Like mine is definitely like, once I get my sweet tooth on a roll, oh my gosh, like, watch out. Right. But a couple of days of not doing that, I can sort of step out of it. And I have to do that by replacing it with things that actually serve me. And so I think a lot of times, when I feel like when you're quitting something like that, those are big things, especially when you're talking about the alcohol and, really stopping that. It was a big decision, but once you've made it, but if you're replacing it then with things that are actually, because we all have addictive tendencies. So what's just like, there was a book one time, I think that was 101 positive addictions to replace the ones you don't want. You know what I'm saying? Like there's positive things that we can actually get addicted to, if you want to call it that, right? Like, but they're habits, right, that we put into our lives. So what I hear you saying is you just made some decisions about things you didn't want for you that really are about self-care, right? And then replacing them with things that did serve you. So that's really, so I guess it's a great question, right? For any mom who's like watching this or who's thinking about it, like what are those things that don't serve you, right?
And I know what it's like, I know what it's like to be a mom who's had like hardly any sleep and has a cup of coffee in the morning because it wakes you up. And I also know what it's like to be a new mom and not have that coffee, and I still get through. I still wake. I'm so much. I really reflect, and I'm so much more energized now than I was when I was drinking coffee and I had my first son. So it is about that replacement thing. I really love how you put that together, and I really do think that it's crucial to be allowed yourself to feel those feelings, because if you're going through a really tough time, if you don't feel that and let those emotions out and like numb it with things like coffee, alcohol, Netflix, whatever it is, then it will get stagnant and suppressed. And as an EFT practitioner, that's something that I also like look at, and it's all that goes into your subconscious and the programming there, but it will get literally, those feelings will get stuck in your body and stored as trauma, and if you keep building up, then something, it's really detrimental to your health.
Yeah, and the EFT stuff can be very valuable with that as well. So we've talked about a lot of stuff here, and I think obviously you've heard Mala's story. I'm going to put up her banner here because I noticed right actually on the front of your website, you had something about the journaling where they could get prompts for journaling.
Yeah. So I have self-love journal prompts, which are some really useful prompts that you can get, and you can take some time for yourself and just take one prompt at a time. I invite you to. You can do it however you want. Maybe you'd want to do all of them at once, but if you take one at a time and just sit with it and just journal. And so for me, journaling is about stream of consciousness. It's about not filtering. So I used to do morning pages. Julia Cameron talks about that, where you first thing when you wake up, you just journal stream of consciousness, 3 pages, whatever comes out, whether it makes sense or not. And so you could do that first and then go into the journal prompts, or you could just go straight into the journal prompt. But I really think it's great to just not filter your words and just let it write and let it flow. And 5 minutes, if you're a mama and you're busy, 5 minutes is better than not at all. It doesn't have to be long.
Yeah, I used to do it when I first started doing it. It was just like if I filled up a page. If I went more, that was fine, but I had to fill up at least 1 page in my journal. And it wasn't like it was, it wasn't like a huge journal. It was like a smaller, but as long as I filled up 1 page, it was a start point for me, right? So I think just like bite-sized things that you can do. But so I noticed that on you. So if you want to reach out to Mala, it's malakennedy.com. And for those of you who are listening, it's KENNEDY.com. So malakennedy.com. And you can reach out and tap into more of her stuff that she's doing, because I think there's a lot out there too, even about your EFT work and just different things that you're prompting for moms. So thank you for being on. We close out every show with a dot, which is a drop of thought. And so if you were going to leave a drop of thought for the moms, I guess in this case, or it could be for the whole family, but for the mom for sure, what would that drop of thought be that you want to share?
For me, it really is about those like tiny commitments, and starting really small and just getting into the habit of building your self-trust, and the simple act of, if you're going to start really small, just commit to one time a week, every week, that you're going to make for you, even if it's 15 minutes, and start there and make that yours and make it known. Tell people, declare it to people that is, so that you have agreement and it's a commitment and it's your time. And that, I just think, you set yourself up for success if you start tiny. It's how I approach everything in life, and it's had wonderful results for me in transformation. So
great. Thank you so much. I share a dot, which is the same one because it's the heartbeat of everything that I do. But the ripples don't flow in, they flow out. And if we really want to see change out in our world, then it's going to start with us in our own homes, with our own families first. So thank you so much, Mala, for being here. Thank you for everyone who watched the show today. If you have any questions, please drop them in, give us a thumbs up, like us, whatever you want to do. And if you have questions, we'll come back out and look at them later for Mala. Because I know a lot of people watch this on replay. So anyway, thank you, Mala, for being here. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And thank you. So, and I guess now it's time for you to go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thanks.